I admit that I was jealous of boys, but they considered that this is very typical for trans people. But when I now speak that this was bad for me, that medical transition was wrong, they say that I lied to doctors. You know, someone who got trauma sometimes needs to be checked very long time.
Now they ask you 2 or 3 questions and then they give you hormones.
There is also another side, people who went through transition to the very, advanced level after surgeries, and then they feel that they destroyed their lives. And there is another thing, that they are ashamed and they also don't want to speak about this.
So welcome, Magda. We're doing a recording for GenSpect for Detrans Awareness Day 2024. And just so everybody knows, Magda is in the support group that I facilitate for Beyond Trans. The idea being there that we kind of focus on social skills and providing kind of more peer support rather than therapeutic support or professional support. And Magda's been in the group for a couple of months now. Okay? It's about 8 months, I think. Magda?
Yes, I think
Quite a while. It's like June last year. So we know each other quite well. So if anyone's wondering how this happened, that's how it happened. And yeah, we were quite keen. We've spoken about a lot of things in detail in the group. Obviously, there's other members in the group that have contributed, and we really wanted to share that with everybody for Detrans Awareness Day 2024, because probably more than ever, people need to hear from detransitioners, because there are some people that are trying to silence certain organizations and certain people. So we thought it was important to do it because behind the scenes, behind all the arguments, the laws and the debates about treatment and the statistics and the research and the blah, 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 is real people, you know. And I know there are obviously other detransitioners. Laura Becker is a friend of mine, and there's a couple of other people that are involved with GenSpect as well. So obviously there are people that are speaking out, that are being very courageous. But from the other side of the world, in Poland, where Magda lives, she's been quite active as well. And I thought it would be good for everybody to see a different perspective coming from a different part of Europe, to show that this is actually a real problem all over the world, really. I know that in South Africa, it's building steam as well, even though there's already a lot of debate. So that's actually good news from my country, South Africa. Although I live in Sweden now, we are tackling that in South Africa already. But Magda, yeah, do you want to? Magda and I discussed a couple of questions we could talk about today. But Magda, you are very capable of handling this, so you go right ahead. I know there's things that you did want to talk about specifically. Do you want to tell us what those were?
Well, here in Poland, I guess the subject is not so loud as in the United States, Canada, and UK, because no people in the media admit that they make the transition. I know that there is more people of from this community that just left it and then started to live their own lives, because they didn't come to the trans space and didn't tell people that they decided to end the transition or just to make the transition. There were people on different, let's say, stage of transition, because some people just tried taking hormones for a short while, and then they noticed that this doesn't help them, or that this makes their situation worse. So they decided they would just stop taking the hormones, but they didn't tell this to anyone, and then just left the trans community because they understood that this is wrong, a
Mm,
wrong way to go. This is
mm,
one thing. But there is also another side where people who went through transition to the very, advanced level
mm,
because they are after surgeries, and then they feel that they destroyed their lives. And there is another thing that they are ashamed, and they also don't want to speak about this.
mm,
I learned about that such people exist when I started to be public and started to speak about my case. And then I noticed some people write comments telling that they know such person who was in transition, and then he or she decided that this is something terrible, and
mm,
they just made legal the transition on their own. So they didn't ask for any help from lawyers
mm.
or any support in trans groups, because trans groups really don't help in the transition, regardless of what they say. But this I can tell you later how this help, pseudo help, looks like.
Mm.
But those people just made legal the transition on their own. There were some success with this, but they started to live their own life and they don't want to be back to the subject. So they don't want to speak
Exactly.
publicly,
Yeah.
right? So they will not be visible. There is no statistics. By the way, the legal detransition is made the same way like transition. So it goes to the statistics as another transition, not as the transition.
Yeah.
That's why it is not visible.
So it looks like on paper, it looks like another transition,
Trans, yes,
but it's actually not. It's actually the reverse.
yes. This is the reverse. There is
Yeah.
also a lot of people who never changed their ID or the sex mark in ID.
Yeah.
So this is even easier for them because they just stopped stopped going to the next steps. They stopped hormones and they didn't go to the doctor and didn't tell them the please notice that I make the transition. This is just a secret. It's like no one knows about this. Another thing is
Mm.
that in our Polish group, when I admit that I'm in the transition, but I still sit on the group because I'm looking for a specialist who could write an opinion for me again for
Mm.
legal the transition. And I was looking for someone who will not affirm, who will be just honest and will check my story and eventually will write the recommendation that I should go back to my true ID.
Mm.
I was banned from the group and I was right away banned from another trans group without any notice. So I was not informed that I am banned. I was not doing anything bad. I was not insulting. I was not spamming. I
Mm.
just admitted that I am the transitioner and I was
And
banned
banned
from
straight
the group.
away.
Yes. When
Wow.
I tried to join a few days later, I couldn't. So I
Mm.
understood that I was banned. But what else? It's like, there is another thing that is very important also here, and I believe that in other countries it's the same. When they say that we are just 0, comma, I don't know, 3 or 1%, that means that their um, surveys are done wrong because, like I said before, those people don't sit in trans areas, or if they sit, they are quiet and they don't want to participate in such surveys where you go to the survey and first question is, what are your pronouns? And I wouldn't want to take part in such survey because this is, for me, this is traumatic. This whole language of trans community is traumatic for me. I don't want to take part in it. So
So
I wouldn't
so
fit this survey.
yeah, let me just because you said that the other day in one of our meetings, and I was it seems so obvious now, but when you said it, I was like, of course. So that as much as being asked your pronouns seems like a silly thing to complain about, um, for a desister or a detransitioner, whatever we want to call them, someone in recovery from transition, whatever we want to call them, um, it's an indication that there's bias in the document already, that whoever's asking the questions is already biased. So why would you begin providing information to someone who's already supporting the ideology? Because there's no, I think people need to remember that there is no research basis for any valid reason to change pronouns. There's no, it's not like we did a massive study of people over 20 years and we discovered that if we let them change their pronouns, they'll be happier. There's no such thing. So when you see it in a document like I just saw, that's why I'm also a little bit worked up by it in the last week. I just saw it in the South African Psychology Association uh, gender guidelines. Okay. Also, pronouns, affirmation, cisgender. They use cisgender in a professional document related to the psychology profession. This is not an advocacy group. It's a professional association. I gave them feedback. I emailed them and I said, look, if you want to have a meeting, I'm happy to have a meeting, but these are the reasons why what you're doing is harmful. And I'm glad that you've said it like that, that it's actually for people that have been harmed by this process, it is actually traumatic. So these people that talk about microaggressions and all these things, when it comes to you, the people that have actually been harmed, they don't want to talk about it. Then it's conveniently, oh, we just erase you. We just delete you. We block you. We ban you. You know, it's unbelievable. To me, it's unbelievable.
Yes. I also not remember the people that I knew, they also disappeared from group by their on their own because they
No,
left.
yeah.
One girl just discovered how testosterone destroys her health, and I met her after a few years, and I discovered that she lives as a girl again. Another girl who was on testosterone and after hysterectomy left the forum because she got very serious problems, permanent pains. And this story I know just from the other people
Mm,
who were in trans community in the past and also are the transitioners. So, these stories are not really visible.
mm,
These things I learned just from the other sites and from other places, like I said, like some comments, some private chats, but this is not public. The
mm,
other thing in surveys is that probably the questions are asked the way that you cannot really tell uh, those people why you decided to make the transition because the answers are fixed and the answers are
ah,
they are prepared for trans language. So
yes.
because you didn't have support of your parents, because you were harassed by the society,
It's
because
biased.
yes, you didn't, let's say,
Wow.
didn't have cash. Eventually you are not happy with surgery. This sometimes is in those surveys, but this is also not the real reason, because it's not that we were not happy with the results, but we decided that this is completely crazy idea and we don't want to be of opposite sex. But
Exactly.
this
So
is
one of the
not in the
options
survey.
should
Yes.
be, I think this is crazy, or
Exactly.
maybe that's I'm being a little bit dramatic, but
Yeah, but
maybe
in other
something saying,
words, yeah, in
I
other
don't
words,
believe this is good for me anymore.
yes,
I don't believe the medicalization specifically. And then that should call up another level, which is what didn't work for you. Well, the hormones didn't work for me. Why didn't they work for you? Because of XYZ, you know.
yes,
I mean, in our group, I'm not going to mention names, but in our group, we've got young girls with male pattern baldness and a very deep voice. We've got someone else who's had surgeries has phalloplasty that they're not happy about. There's all sorts of things that, like you said, it puts them in a position, and I think a lot of people don't understand this, is once you've done certain things, if your voice has changed and you've got male pattern baldness and you've got facial hair already, it is actually very difficult to detransition. And actually, at that point, it becomes a question of, okay, what is actually better for you? Because then I think maybe that's where the language makes a difference, because then you start talking about just assisting. You just assist. You don't pursue the next step, because it's amazing how, I don't know, to me, it's just amazing how the whole trans pipeline resembles like a marketing program. It's like, if you buy this, then we'll give you this, but then you need to buy this. Then when you've got that, then you can go to the top tier level and you can get this other stuff. And then when you've got that, then you'll be, perfect or something. I don't know what happens. Apparently something amazing happens. I'm yet to see what that thing is, because I don't see it. I mean, I accept, to a certain extent, I accept that some people have transitioned and they're fine. Okay. They're functioning. They're having relationships. They're keeping their jobs. I understand that. There's thousands of people that are transitioned. Some people have made it work for them. Okay. My problem is mainly with the harm that's been done and the people that regret it, that then get completely abandoned. That is a sign that this is actually an ideology, that it's not a medical procedure which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't work. Like, we're not talking about, a nose job or a facelift or something like that. People that regret a facelift are not blocked and deleted, So there's things here that alarm me from that perspective. And the thing about the language, Magda, I must tell you that when I looked at that document in South Africa, I looked at it yesterday. It's exactly what you said, and I didn't realize that that's what was bothering me, because they asked for feedback about the new gender guidelines. Okay, they're open. Sure, they are. They're open to comments. All right, but actually, what they want, like, one of the questions was, I mean, I wish I had it now in front of me, but one of the questions was something like, "How can we make these guidelines more common?" And it's like, no, you need to throw these guidelines in the dustbin and start again, because they've got, I mean, in the document, just from a academic perspective, if you put certain things that are in the association's guidelines, if you put them in a psychology student essay, okay, there is one of the comments was, there's no research in this area, but there's no indication that people with children with parents that have transitioned have suffer in any way. Okay, but you've just said there's no research. So how can you make a statement that you say that there's no harm done to these kids when no one's done any research? You shouldn't be allowed to make that statement, not in an actual published policy guidelines. And then they have the contradictions are literally, one line says, we support affirmation. Okay. And then the next line, the very next line says, we accept, as psychologists, if you agree to this guideline, we accept that gender is fluid. Okay. But how can gender be fluid and affirmed at the same time? I don't understand that. How can that be a professional document? If a student wrote that document, it would have been thrown out. So that thing about the language and how they design these forms to support the ideology, to support the political agenda, And then, of course, what's interesting to me as well is that you can see that there's sections of the document that are very ethical in terms of treating diversity, treating people that are LGBT, how things that we know. Okay, we know they work unconditional positive regard, understanding the intersectionality of their lives, all these other things that we know about in psychology, and they apply to everybody. Because why? Because we're all human. All right. And then out of the blue, there's these odd one-liners. And I think what happened was some professionals developed a document, and then at the last minute, the ideology came in and they said, no, we have to put this and this and this and this. The fact that they're still quoting WPATH to me is crazy. But anyway, that's maybe an intellectual argument that we can have with somebody else, you know. But carry on, Magda. I think you're making some very good points that people just don't understand how carefully designed this whole thing is, that it goes right down to the forms, but you don't get an option to complain.
You
You
can't
know?
complain, and also you are not even I would say not invited to that survey, because if they ban those people or they call them trolls, even if someone comes to the trans group and says,
Exactly.
I think this is not good, I don't feel well, they tell him, well, change the um, one estrogen to another one. Maybe this one is not good, or maybe change testosterone in the shots to the gel or whatever, you know. So
Yeah.
they will not tell you that okay, this is not good. Tell us what was wrong. No, it's just, or they tell that this is a troll, a provocateur, things like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And they know this and they are afraid. By the way, I must tell you that a lot of those people don't have support in real life. For some reason, they joined the trans community because they didn't have those supporting people. But I don't talk about transition. I talk about support in life, general, you know, good friends, good
Yeah.
family. Maybe parents didn't have time for them.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't were not accepted at
It's
schools.
acceptance as well. Yeah.
So they joined the trans groups, and now they know very well that if they make the transition or if they speak the truth, they will be kicked out. And this is the only group for them at that time in their lives. So they try to sit quiet.
Yeah. And
This is
agree
another thing,
and
and agree and speak the
yeah.
same language, and just to vanish their doubts. They have some doubts, they have some worries, but they try to vanish it because they know that this is not accepted there.
Yeah.
The other thing is that you know, like I said before, those people don't want to speak about this. And if you want to find those people, you have to go completely out of even LGBT communities.
How would you find them? I mean, once somebody abandons this whole thing, they just become one of the public. How would you find them? I mean, I suppose you could go to the medical records if there were any. I mean, nowadays, I heard yesterday about someone in Ukraine. There's a website in Ukraine that sells estrogen by mail order, you know. Apparently, I think it's been shut down, but I'm not sure what the details are. I didn't ask for details because I'm not sure I want to know that kind of stuff. But if someone can access the medication, the hormones from different places, then there isn't even medical records to show who these people are,
No,
you know,
no,
and there's definitely no records to show they stopped.
no, because even if you checked, you might find some people that they stopped buying testosterone, for example, uh, but you will not be sure. A lot of people
Mm.
never took testosterone. They left the ideology before they even got
Before that, yeah.
testosterone, or they try it in the black market, and
Yeah.
this is not something that you can find out. It's very hard to find. Like I said, I learned few stories when my interviews were released, and I was
Mm.
contacting even myself those people, and they told me more details, because if I didn't, they would not contact me directly, right?
Exactly.
I also was told by people that they know someone like this, but those people were not talking to me directly, so I couldn't find them. I might if I want, but they probably even don't want to speak about this.
Mm.
and I understand this. But I think that you should just maybe you should just give them some area to talk about this. If they could be free to speak, to speak without being judged.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then maybe they would come and speak about this, but probably not all of them. Plus, we don't know how many of those people ended their lives.
That's another thing. Yeah, that's another thing. Just while we're talking, I'm just going to share some stuff that you've done for people to see. So that's a documentary that you did. I'm not going to play it, but just to show people what you did. But carry on. The thing about taking their own lives, that's a common problem in suicide statistics in general, because the fact is, if you attempt suicide and you fail, but you end up with an injury, there's no records of that either. So a lot of
Yes,
people don't understand that a lot of attempted suicides in general have they fail as well, but they end up
yes,
with permanent harm. So in the case of this, um, no one goes around asking what is the reason you attempted to take your own life. No one's collecting that kind of statistics. And
yes,
I would say, I mean, the attitude that I have with the group, for example, is, I've told everyone in the group this before, that as far as I'm concerned, each person in the group represents thousands of desisters and detransitioners. So
yes,
I don't see it as you talking. I'm in those sessions talking to just you. I'm talking to thousands of people that think like you, that had a similar experience. you know
yes.
um what do you think of that? I mean, do you agree with that?
Well, I think in general that those people just are in the society and you cannot find them. There is no right way to find them in big amount. You might find
Mm,
some of them. They might not want to talk about that, but you will find some. But you are not able to find everyone. And the only thing that
exactly.
we can do, or the best thing that we can do, is to encourage those who wish to speak it publicly.
Mm,
This is the only thing, because we cannot make all of them go public.
no.
But some
Yeah.
of them might want, but they are still afraid, and we could try to
Yeah.
make them feeling comfortable. Because I would like also to say that there is another thing that I wanted to speak about insisting that we were never trans.
Mm.
And this is another very important point. When we were
True
in the
trans. It's this true trans
exactly,
thing. Yeah.
exactly, because when we were all in the trans community, we all were trans. All all would tell us that we
Just
are real,
tell
real trans.
everybody how long you were trans for and what you did, if you don't mind. Just
When
just so they understand that you.
I joined the community in 2006, and I started testosterone in 2007, or at the end of 2006, something like this. And as long as I was on the forum, I remember on beginning, those, let's say, symptoms that I had, let's say, or things, my experience that I was talking about with other people from the group, uh, everyone was saying that this is something very typical for trans. And when I decided to stop testosterone in 2014, they told me that this is not very smart idea because I'm playing with hormones. If I
Yeah.
started testosterone, I should never stop it. But they didn't say the same when I decided to take it. Well, this was fine. But when I decided to end this, a madness, they say, no, this is not smart because I should continue. And the same thing is said sometimes by some doctors that I can't understand how doctor can encourage
So
to
it's a
take it.
different and that's again it's a sign of ideology. So when you want to start testosterone, everyone says yeah, no problem, it's quite safe, you'll feel good because there's always that euphoria when you start it.
Yes.
And then you do it for years, and then when you announce that you think it's not working for you anymore, you want to stop. And now all of a sudden it's no, but that's dangerous. You have to balance your hormones, and you have to be responsible, and you have to control your levels. And I know I've
Yes.
heard this many times as well. Yeah,
That's what exactly what was said. I believe that this is in every country. It's um, the same guidance, like guidelines for Americans, the same
yeah,
for Polish people, like translator. Like you put it in translator and you will get the same
it's the same.
phrases.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But to be specific, for some reason, even though that's global knowledge about the dangers of hormone therapy, even though that's global knowledge, it's deliberately suppressed if you're trans and you want to start using hormones. It's not suppressed if you're trans and you want to stop using hormones. That's, I
yes.
mean, that makes no sense. But anyway, carry on.
Well, another thing was that I admit that I was jealous of boys. And this is true
Mm,
because I was jealous of boys even when I was kid many times and very jealous. But they considered that this is very typical for trans people. But it's not like but when I now speak that this was bad for me, that medical transition was wrong, they say that I lied to doctors. That was really no lie because, yes, I didn't say some things, but I didn't have to because I don't believe that any woman who was raped or sexually abused really wish to speak about this to foreign guy on the
mm,
first appointment and the only one appointment. Someone who got trauma sometimes needs to be um, checked very long time
mm.
and they need to speak for long time with the doctor with this
Yeah,
specialist to get some trust to open and to speak all the truth. It's not something that you can just come and speak on the first meeting with someone. So
exactly.
so this is something that this should be done by specialists to find out what happened, especially that my mother was right behind me and she was telling those specialists, hey, this happened suddenly and my daughter says that she always was jealous of boys. Okay, but she always looked like a girl. She behaved like normal girl.
Yeah.
She played with toys for boys, but she never told us that she wanted to be boy. Because I
Mm,
never was thinking this way.
mm,
I could be jealous. I liked some things that were typical for boys, but there is a lot of people. You can if let's say you go 50 years ago and you spoke to those girls that were tomboys, you could tell them you can take hormones, they would take it. But that time, no one
exactly.
did this. And they grow up and they are normal. They are just women. And now they are being told you might be boy if you are jealous of
Mm,
boys. You
mm,
might be boy. Maybe you can just discover your real identity. Maybe you can play and you can always go back if you don't like us.
yeah,
Yes, so this is like this. But
exactly.
like I really didn't lie. I admit in the interview that there were some guidance how to speak to doctors, what you need to say, what you shouldn't say, to make it fast. But it was not like I made up whole story. I was saying things that were helpful, but were from my life, like that I was jealous.
Well,
For some time, when I was 13, I used to wear boy big trousers, things like this, because I liked it, because I was getting breast and I was getting fat legs, and I didn't like this. I wanted to hide it. But I grew up from it in, let's say, half of high school, and then I looked very feminine.
Yeah.
I didn't say this, so like I hide that part, but it was not a lie. Like, especially specialists should check this all very,
Well, now they ask you 2 or 3 questions and then they give you hormones. There's
Yes.
no, I mean, just so everyone knows, I've actually seen the pictures that Magda's talking about, and obviously I know a little bit more detail because we've shared the group space together. But just to say, like, I think there's a lot of female trans, not all of them, but a lot of them probably think that presenting male will make them safer in a very dangerous masculine world, if they're in that environment for whatever reason. And then obviously for men, it's a little bit different. For males, there's a perception from a lot of males that women get all the benefits, and that's in a completely different context. So it's quite sad that we have these different environments that are creating people that think being the opposite sex is a better strategy. And to me, it's like the fact that there are people on both sides doing the same thing, trying to be each other. Okay, the contexts are usually different. So it seems like in certain environments, you'll have more girls that want to become male or more masculine or be seen as men. But then in other environments, it'll be the males who think that being female, being perceived as female. Because I'm using my language carefully here, because for many, many years, it's been perfectly fine to be feminine. If you're a gay man and you're a little bit feminine, in most Western liberal environments, nobody really cares. Okay. Obviously, we're talking about the West mostly here because this problem, I mean, I know there's a lot of sex change people in Thailand, but that's a very different environment. We don't have to talk about that because it doesn't affect what the people that are going to watch this, But the fact that there's people in these different environments that would rather be each other, to me, is a sign that we can't enable that, because it's going to introduce a level of chaos into society, which is just completely unsustainable. And it shows that, to me, that fact shows that we need to help them adjust to being who and what they are, rather than offering this as a solution, that surgery is a solution to an emotional problem. That's the thing that really disturbs me, because as a professional in psychology, if we started doing that with other things, like I know a lot of people talk about, like with anorexia. I was anorexic when I was younger for 7 years. I was severely underweight, 22% underweight. If someone had said to me, well, I don't know, we can do a stomach surgery and make you thin for the rest of your life, I probably would have said yes, because I hated. I mean, I had this little band, Magda, of fat around my belly. It was like this big around my belly button. Okay. I could not get rid of it. All right. And now I'm comfortable with it. It's there and it's fine. But I'm still aware. I mean, I'm 50 years old now and I'm still aware of my weight. So I've learned to live with the little gremlin in my head that says, you're gaining weight, you've got fat here and you've got fat there. And what does that mean anyway? And only recently, I don't mind sharing this because I talk about this often. Only recently, during lockdown, because lockdown was such an intense period of deprivation. I mean, I think we're going to, in psychology, I think we're going to identify lockdown syndrome, which a lot of people are suffering from still today, because there's a lot of problems with people that did not cope with lockdown. But one of the things that happened with me was it suddenly dawned on me at the age of, well, during lockdown, I would have been 47, 48. It dawned on me that gaining weight was a sign that you were losing control of your life. And my mom, when she had a nervous breakdown many, many years ago, when I was 13 when she had a nervous breakdown, she gained weight just before, a lot of weight, just before she had a breakdown. And I realized at the age of, imagine, 47, 48, that that's what I think weight is. And of course, it's ridiculous. I mean, of course, anybody watching this, obviously, gaining weight has got to do with many, many other things. But that's what I was, that's why it used to make me anxious. And I didn't want to see it on myself because I was terrified of that happening to me. I mean, you can imagine being a 13-year-old boy and the adult, the only person that cares about you in this world, has a nervous breakdown for apparently no reason. You know, you're a boy. I mean, I was a young boy. I didn't understand this, you know. So I think when we go back and we look at the things that young people, when you were young, the threats that you perceive, and then you start looking for options to deal with those threats. And someone says, you can present as a man. So if you have a belief that men are dangerous, and someone says to you, you can become the thing that you fear, obviously you're going to take it. Even though now, yes, it sounds irrational, but as a child, you don't understand that that's irrational, you know. The brain development thing, again, I think people just don't acknowledge it. The public who think that they're supporting trans people out of the goodness of their heart, they don't understand that a lot of these kids are making the decision when their brain isn't functioning normally up until 25 or so. You know, I mean, this is a fact. This isn't something we're disputing, you know. All right, fine. I mean, I would say maybe after 18, we can let people pursue what they want. But I definitely think surgery shouldn't be something that someone decides on easily. I think if we go back a couple of years, we look at the way they did it in the UK, you had to live as the opposite sex for 2 years before they would let you consider surgery. And what was happening in those days? A lot of people dropped out. A lot of people desisted because actually it turned out living as the opposite sex was not actually helping them, you know. But how are you going to know that unless you do it for 2 years?
But
So
that is like I would say I don't know how it's in other countries, but here this requirement was in the past, but it was not possible to verify if someone really lives like this 2 years, because people speak that they are like this since, let's say, 5 6 years, but this is not true. And now, even if someone goes to the specialist, they say that they can function like opposite sex for a few years, or even from the childhood, and
yeah,
then their parents get the letter and they say, well, this is nonsense because this is not true, but the specialist already wrote that.
already said it. Yeah,
Yeah. So
exactly.
so I would say, from my side, I don't support destroying people life even if they are adult, because I know how it works. Like you said, brain is developing till about 25,
5, yeah.
or even sometimes longer. People, uh, even people who are
Depends.
dirty, let's say 30 years old,
Yeah,
they don't want
yeah.
to have kids because they think that kids are a problem, that this is something that they don't want, then want to
Mm.
make career. And they say,
Well,
they say, I didn't want kids so long, so I don't need them probably. And
yeah.
they make the decision because they believe that this will be good for them. Like I decided something because I didn't want to take so much of testosterone. Instead of leaving it completely, I decided I will take it less. But if I got support that time, I would leave it completely.
if
So
if you got support, but the point
yeah,
is you didn't get support.
I
So
didn't.
so just to make sure everyone understands, you tried to desist, but because you didn't have support to do it properly and safely, you realized it was probably safer with what you understood at the
But
time to
but
carry on.
I need to tell you, it's not like I didn't have support of my parents. I
Ah,
would, but I was so ashamed to tell them that I want to go back.
Yeah.
because I was fighting for
Yeah.
it for a
For
very long
so long.
time with my mother. I was fighting. I was proving that this is good for me. And
Mm.
even when I discovered that this is not, I was not able to admit it at the time.
And the shame will stop people admitting that they desisted. Like you said, if someone just wears a chest binder for 6 months and then
Yes.
desists, the fact that they've realized they were making a mistake means the shame is going to stop them talking about it. Why would they go around talking about it? They wouldn't do it, especially if it's a young girl. I mean, we're talking about, like, I think this is kind of what you were saying just now anyway. You're talking about a population that started the process because they were vulnerable already. So to expect these
Exactly.
people to suddenly be courageous enough to talk about the fact that they desist and they don't believe in a medically professionally promoted ideology, these kids are not going to do that. You know, kids and older people, obviously. To me, everyone's a kid anyway, because I'm older now. But Magda, we should stop now. But I want to ask you two things, if it's okay. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
Well, I would also add one advice, maybe
Yeah.
um, those who uh, comment the society that see people who really destroyed their life for some period in some period and they made mistake, they should be careful about commenting them because when you are too harsh, when you will tell people that they made themselves monsters or that they are ugly now, then we will not have so many proofs of how ideology is wrong.
Okay.
They need to have support in living this madness because if we attack them or humiliate them, they will not really want to be public because I don't mind. But there are some people, like you said, who already have a lot of problems
Mm,
and they don't want to have more problems or to be
mm,
used, also politically used by left
exactly.
or right side. They
All
don't care
right.
if it will be left or right. They don't want to be used just like this.
Nobody wants to be told. I know we mentioned this in the group the other day. Nobody wants to be told by either side of the political arguments, you've ruined your life, or you've ruined
Yes.
your body, or you maybe they think they're being kind and they say, oh, it's so good that you desisted, but for that period you were a monster. It's a horrible thing to say. And I know, Magda, you've had some personal experience with that. So I just want to remind people that what we're talking about here is not opinion. This is a lived experience that many people, as I said, Magda represents thousands of people who've been through this. So thanks. Yeah. Was that it?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what I would like to say. Maybe another thing that is
Yeah.
also important that I notice also that a lot of people who want to live freely as lesbians or gays are pulled into trans ideology because they think that they will be more accepted like this.
Yeah.
And this also we need to remember and we need to be careful because if we attack them for their orientation, they will rather not want to live this madness. So
Exactly.
it's better if they live as they want, but they don't have to um, act like opposite sex. They don't have to destroy their bodies. They don't have to medicalize. They can be also the girls who want to look like boys. It's okay. I don't mind. It's the same like I don't mind if boy wants to be feminine. It's fine.
Mm,
But if he started to,
yeah.
pretend to be girl, that this is not good for him, especially for him.
I'm gonna
Dating girls.
I'm gonna give just another layer to that comment. I agree with you, but I'm gonna give just another layer because there's some people that I've dealt with who um them being gay, homosexual, lesbian, whichever one, in their environment would not have been a problem. Okay. So what that tells me as a counselor, what that tells me is that the internalized homophobia is taking advantage of their weaknesses, actually. So what you're talking about, and it goes back to what you were saying earlier, we're talking about people that were vulnerable at that time when they start questioning. They start questioning, what is my sexuality? What do I identify as? They're vulnerable at that moment. And this is what I talk about a lot with some of my clients is there's a gap, and the name of our group is called Bridging the Gap for this reason, because there's a gap that the ideology, the trans ideology, the medicalization especially, fills some gap. It's serving some function. And we have to admit that, because if we don't admit that, we'll never see the problem. We'll never identify the problem. So I totally agree with you that parents especially need to be careful that if they are homophobic, or they might not even realize that they're homophobic, okay? Maybe the kids' friends are homophobic, all right? Because that's quite normal. Well, it's not, I suppose I shouldn't say it's normal, but it's quite common, okay? I don't want to say it's normal because I don't want to normalize it, but it's quite common that certain groups will be homophobic. Straight girls will talk about lesbian girls, gay men will talk about straight men. We all have our little camps, especially when we're younger. Kids can be cruel.
Yes.
But I'm thinking about the individual who says, if I become a gay man, I could join that group. If I'm a straight man, I could join that group. So think about if he lives in a liberal Western environment, okay? So technically, there's no incentive for him to present straight because both have benefits, both have acceptance in his environment, okay? So what it shows us is that it's the individual who has a weakness, and that vulnerability is, I'm too afraid to come out as gay. So it's easier for me, but that's a weakness. You see what I'm saying? I mean,
Yes.
maybe a weakness is a bit harsh. It's a vulnerability. So someone has other things that they're dealing with, which we already know in psychology, that they have comorbidities. There's often ADHD, OCD, spectrum. They're on the spectrum. There's all sorts of things that can happen. Okay. But the point being that if you have some self-esteem and some compassion for yourself, some self-compassion, then you can say, well, it's fine. I can become gay because my parents will accept me. I'll have a new bunch of friends. You will be accepted in most Western environments. Okay. So the fact that they don't means that someone, ironically, it's the trans ideology that makes gay and lesbian look like it's not an option. So the irony is they're advocating for acceptance and tolerance and inclusion, when in reality, what they want is they want you to be either presenting as a heterosexual female or a heterosexual male. Because, well, you have gender confusion and you have sexual confusion. You must be one or the other. And I know from talking to many, many people in this that are dealing with this, that even if they've transitioned, they still don't know if they're gay or bi or whatever. They still don't know. Because now what's happened is they're dealing with this other thing. They're dealing with being trans,
Yes.
and it turns out trans is not actually a sexuality. It's chaos. It's confusion, So we should stop, but I just want to say as well, like, what would you say if someone asked you, is it better to affirm someone we should actually say someone who has sex dysphoria, because that's what transition is. Transition is actually pretending to treat sex dysphoria. It's saying that I was born in the wrong body, right? So we say we should affirm the belief that they have that they were born in the wrong body. So we start giving them medicalization and we turn them into the opposite sex. I mean, is there any benefit to affirming this idea?
In my opinion, no.
Okay.
First of all, if you affirm someone socially, some people will say, well, this is not harmful because they don't take any meds. But I would say that this only makes more confusion and makes their idea, their illusion, maybe even illusion, some people believe this, stronger. And they will rather want to go to the next step because they will be called, let's say girl will be called with male name, but she will still look like a girl and she will want to be, she don't want to be somewhere between, so she will want to go for the next
More.
step
Yeah.
more. So I think this is not good. But from the other side, I know also when parents get angry or they are very not supporting their kids at all, then the kids may do the opposite. Of course, when they are not adult, they need the agreement and things like this, but they may go more into the trans community that will be supporting. So
Supporting, yeah.
best thing is to not affirm the new identity, but support the kids regardless of anything. So focus on other things. I would even say to limit the internet because most of
I agree.
this ideology goes from
Comes
internet.
from the internet, yeah. Definitely. Look, there's a lot of research in general about how bad social media. There was a whistleblower that came out with documents from within Facebook, from within Meta, that they themselves knew that Instagram was bad for young girls. They knew that. And even if you don't believe that story, the research in psychology has proven repeatedly that social media is detrimental to young people's mental health because of the comparisons, because of the competition that it creates. It disconnects them, the disassociation that they feel from being online all the time. They disconnect from real life relationships. They start, I mean, someone that spends too much time on the internet starts losing the ability to relate to other people. So we say that some of these people are on the spectrum. Well, maybe they've just spent too much time on the internet because you've got these very high IQ people. Gen Z has a very high IQ in general, but they have very low emotional intelligence. And again, a lot of this research came out regarding anorexia, came out regarding the incel problem, the incel culture. So this is stuff that we knew about already, and then I'm going to end just by saying, I want anyone who's never watched us before, because I've done a podcast with Laura Becker, the Trans Psyche Pod. I've done one or two other interviews. I know you've done some stuff as well. And I know you'll agree with me here, but I just want to make sure that people understand. My concern is actually the trans people. Okay. I won't speak for you. You can make your own comment, but my concern is actually trans people because I know that this isn't going to be good for them. Okay, that for a lot of them it's going to be misleading. There might be a small percentage that it provides some kind of relief. I'm not sure about that, but as someone who struggled with body dysmorphia, anorexia, orthorexia, masculinity when I was younger, I can see how this making decisions during that period of confusion is a mistake. It's making lifelong decisions is a mistake. If you come to me at 25 and you say that you still want to transition, no problem. I will support you in any which way you want, but my concern is the people that are victims of this premature intervention. That's what I would call it, a premature intervention that is bypassing traditional methods of assessing someone's mental state, their capacity to make decisions. So my problem is the medicalization of a vulnerable population. That is my problem. I don't have a problem with trans people. I have a problem with the people that want to medicalize that population. So just to make that clear, because maybe some people haven't heard us, would you agree with that? What do you think?
I agree because this will make them patients for life, especially the young ones, because when you start transition, when you are 30, it's a different story. But when they are very young and they remove their ovaries, they will have to be on synthetic estrogen. Like the young girl cannot be like this. The older girl can, but
Yeah.
The same, like, you know, those people will even not experience how is to be adult woman or adult man,
Yeah.
because being
Never.
you know, a fake man, it's not being a man, but
You'll
being
never be
yeah,
either.
no, you will not be. But if you are adult woman, you can see how it is and how it's all awesome. It's better than to, you know, it's better than when you are a teen. The
Exactly. That's
same,
true.
yeah. I know how it's to be, but if I was medicalized when I was 13, I wouldn't know. And I
That's a
would be
I love
very,
that you said
very
that, because
sad.
I only started enjoying being a man, to be honest, around 33, to be honest. I finally, I was like, okay, I have some success. I can start choosing hobbies. I went and I did my pilot's license. I was like, this is the bomb, you know. But up until then, I mean, I had a very difficult childhood, so there's some other things that I had to deal with. Up until then, yeah, I was struggling. I was struggling to be accepted. I wasn't sure if I was appealing to women. There were, even though I had a healthy relationship life, a healthy sex life. The fact is, you don't really mature. And I mean, this is quite common again, that men especially mature a little bit later. And in this particular era that we're in, Gen Z have got the problem of the failure to launch, which we know about, we've known about for 10, 15 years already, that a lot of Gen Z are staying home longer and longer and longer. You know, so that's going to introduce all sorts of really new problems that we didn't really understand before, you know.
Yeah.
So look, we better stop. But thanks, Magda, and I hope I'll anyway see you soon, because we're in the group. But we'll put this on the GenSpect website, and hopefully we'll get some nice feedback.
Thank you for the talk.
Okay, pleasure,
See
Magda.
you.
Bye bye.